Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Delighted to have back in the studio with us Patrick Doyle. He heads up Veritas Counseling. And today's topic I think you'll find to be pretty interesting, and that is how childhood trauma affects someone as an adult. Now, this is a subject there's no way we can cover it in the hour we'll be here today. A lot of people say don't go there. Some people say you have to go there.
Yep.
But I think we have to come to what is trauma.
Well, one of the things that I've seen over time, Perry, is that people want to define trauma for other people. And listen, I can tell you this from my experience as a counselor and as a person, that trauma is in the eyes of the beholder. So if you believe or it affected you in a traumatic way, that's what's important. I think people get nervous about that because people will say, you know, I have a hangnail, it's trauma, you know, but if somebody's traumatized, there's going to be consequences to their behavior. There's going to be consequences to how they view themselves. There's going to be consequences to how they participate in life. So it's not something you can really fake. Once you've seen the difference, you know somebody who's really traumatized and acting out of that. And so somebody can be you know, like a kid, let's say, who has severe medical issues as a kid and gets separated from their family. No one's fault, but it is traumatic to the kid because the kid doesn't know what to do. It's alone, and that kid's not even intellectually capable of really understanding what's happening, right? So later on, you know, you see some behavior there where the kid doesn't want to connect and all these other things. So trauma can come in many forms. It can come emotionally. I know a lot of people who are never harmed physically or sexually, but were harmed emotionally very, very badly. And it can be religious. I've seen people whose parents were, in an effort to do the right thing, religiously abusive. So it can come in many ways. So to define trauma, I would ask the person. You know, I would try to get that definition from the person instead of trying to put a blanket on it. And then what happens, I think, is we sort of miss the nuance of the context of the trauma. And that context is very important to the healing.
Do all people recognize they have been traumatized?
No.
Okay.
Some people recognize they've been traumatized. Because listen, with trauma, I'll just give you an example from my experience. So I'm a kid. I live in a very difficult home. Both my parents are alcoholics. I'm the youngest of all my siblings by 10 years. So my mother was 41 when she had me. Okay, so by the time I'm like old enough to know what's going on, and all my siblings bailed early. They're like, let them get out of here. So I'm alone, but I have siblings, right? So that's a context issue, right? That's not something that happens to everyone. My dad is an alcoholic and he's abusive. He's verbally abusive, he's physically abusive. You cannot live in that environment and be honest. You have to deny reality to survive. The reality is just too intense for a young kid. So I deny it. Or one of the things that happens with kids or young people who are traumatized is what happened to me. It's something in counseling we call dissociation. So I'm there, I'm getting a beating, okay? My dad may be yelling or whatever. I cannot emotionally, intellectually, spiritually handle that reality at that age. So I believe it's God's provision to allow me to disassociate, go somewhere, and sometimes I don't even remember what happened. And then, when it's over, I sort of come back to reality. Sometimes I have memory of what happened, sometimes I don't. And so this is the other thing on the whole memory thing. Listen, this is something I want people to understand about the whole subject. I don't believe that I, as a counselor, or the person I'm counseling, has the ability to know what they need to deal with. I think that's really something only God has the wisdom to understand. So I'm not in favor of sort of rooting around in your soul and trying to find the secrets. I really look at it this way. So you know when you're trying to go to sleep at night, or you're taking a shower, you're driving your car, or whatever, your mind's going, and there's these things from the past that keep popping to the surface. Okay, they're like knocking on the door. Hey, and they won't leave you alone. I think that's God's way of saying, let's start here. Whatever's coming to the surface, let's deal with that. Okay? And so what God does, and then I've seen it so many times, then he sort of weaves us through all those things in your heart. God does not need you to turn over every rock. If that were the case, no one would ever get well.
Boy, there's so much here. And I appreciate the fact that you don't go digging in the past looking for the nugget that supposedly is going to solve the problem that's on the table.
It's never one thing.
Okay. And you also made mention that somehow God gives you call it disassociation, that God will build into you the ability to disconnect.
I think it's his provision of mercy so we don't go insane.
Okay. So sometimes we take the past and we have this ability to bury it.
Yes.
Isn't that a good thing?
Sometimes.
Okay.
So it's a yes and no. What I see happening is, when I say that things start bubbling to the surface, you start having memories, or something starts sort of recurringly bothering you, what people do is they just continue to deny that. And that's where the trouble starts, because I think that's one of the ways it's starting to come to the surface so you can deal with it. And I don't see it usually happen. In fact, I've never seen it happen where everything comes to the surface at once. It bubbles. It's not something I can handle all at once. Anyway, so, and I would just say this as a way of having this as the context of part of the discussion. I strongly believe, and there's others' opinions out there, but this is my opinion, that you can't really heal the trauma until the whole story is told. And the reason why I say that is because the secrets, the things being held in and you denying what's there and trying to redo what happened to you or in your mind or making it be something it's not and living in denial or minimizing or justifying or spiritualizing, whatever. The secrets that you keep are the fuel. Remember, we've talked about the committee that's in your head, and they get together and they talk, undermine you and tell you what a terrible person you are. One of their main fuels is secrets. And when you have a secret that they keep accusing you of and saying, look at what you did and how come and why not, and you can't and you don't know and because and blah, 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 blah. And so when they're pointing at an actual event, like for me, they would remind me, the committee would remind me of something my dad did to me. And I'm like, well, yeah, that happened, so how can I deny that? Well, it's the right information with the wrong implication.
Okay.
So they might be reminding me of an actual event, but the message of that event does not mean that I'm worthless.
Are there some similarities in children that have been traumatized?
In terms of later or when they're children?
Well, our discussion here today is if you've been traumatized as a child, it'll impact you as an adult.
Yep, guaranteed.
Okay. And I want to go there, but if a child has been traumatized, how would we know that?
Well, there's lots of ways to know, but generally speaking, when a child is traumatized, it's within the home they're being raised in.
Right.
So that's why it doesn't get noticed. Some kids get traumatized to the point where they're removed from the home.
Right.
You ask any foster parent.
Right.
And they will tell you it affects the child.
Okay.
So if you see a kid who's
shutting down?
Shutting down is one way. They act out. But again, this is why you have to know the kid to really know. And this is why I get concerned about people making overarching statements and blanket statements, because it's always context specific. And you got to know the kid to some degree, know their personality, how they handle things, to know what's really affecting them. And so I get leery of the whole, here's the carte blanche, just, look at it, then you can decide who's been traumatized. I want it to be a case-by-case thing, because if you don't have some investment in the situation, you're not going to be of any use. And you could cause more harm by prematurely exposing the reality.
Ooh, say that again.
I said you could cause more harm by prematurely exposing the reality.
So it takes a seasoned, experienced counselor to take it in bits and pieces.
That's exactly right. And you have to help the person who's traumatized. Here's the other thing I'll say. One of the mistakes I believe counseling has made is that we get the person to divulge the trauma way before their system's ready to handle it. And what I mean their system is their life. I strongly believe that the first thing I need to help someone do is become more stable, safe at a spiritual level, because that's the foundation that's going to hold up under the difficulty of the coming revelation. So what we do is we expose them to the trauma before the foundation is really built, and then they get worse because they can't handle it. So I think you have to be very, and this is what I said before, I don't know. This is the other thing that I wish we as a culture would get. I don't know how fast or how slow. I don't have that kind of wisdom. I don't think anybody does, but God does. And so He can guide that process, but we as helpers have to be very sensitive to His timing instead of us being in the fix-it mode,
right,
which never helps anyone.
Yeah. Boy, all this requires a lot of patience.
Yeah,
Let me take a break here, but as we take a break, I want you to process this.
Okay.
We have a tendency to think that kids can get through a divorce just fine.
Yeah.
That they're resilient, they'll bounce back, everything will be okay.
Yeah.
When in fact they don't.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to talk to that.
Okay.
We'll be right back with Patrick Doyle.
I will.
Hi, I'm Paulina and I work at the Dove TV. Did you know that when you support the Dove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back with Patrick Doyle, and he has the answers to everything, and I'm just going to sit here and listen.
I just told you I don't.
But I got to tell you something, folks. These programs get on the Dove website later on, probably either by the end of today or tomorrow. And you're certainly welcome to go there and share them, because of all the programs that we do, this is one of the most popular ones that we have with Patrick. So don't let that go to your head, because I'll get you counseling.
Trust me,
I know how to counsel ego problems. Believe me, I can take care of that one.
Yeah, my life has its own way of helping that.
Well, I was going to call her. Yeah. So anyway, but we'll make those available to you. All right, now this next topic to me, I want you to spend a little time here, because. Okay. I've done enough lay counseling as a pastor in the past.
Right.
This notion that kids can just, especially if they're young, they're resilient, they'll get through the divorce, yada, yada, yada. They just don't.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little naive, if not egotistical, of the parent thinking that the kids will get over it.
Yeah, well, so we need to do a little context here. So I've been in circumstances where two parents getting a divorce was the best thing that ever happened to the kids, because one of the parents was destructive. Okay. And so what I hear a lot of times is people saying, using the same, people who don't have a destructive environment,
right,
they just want out,
right,
use the justification that somebody who's being destructive would use. Right? It's an easy rationalization. And there's been some cases where, you know, I have contended, I have encouraged that people do, at a bare minimum, split up, if not divorce, because there's so much harm to the children. Okay? I mean, real harm.
I get that.
We're not talking about, you know, he was late for school and he got scolded.
I mean, you got to select the best of the best,
right,
the least of the worst, I guess.
All right, so then there are other circumstances where people become worn down, selfish. They feel stuck. They feel like this. You know, they don't want to suffer in this way anymore.
You got the affairs. You got all that stuff.
Yes, right. So, but listen, when a parent departs a kid's life, a parent departs a kid's life, and a kid, the scripture says that children's children are a parent's glory. Grandkids. You know something about that, don't you?
They're wonderful.
And then this goes on to say, the King James says that a father is the glory of a child. Other translations say that parents are a glory of a child. So what it's saying to me is that there's a value that's communicated from a parent, and I believe particularly a father, to a child that cannot be duplicated. Okay? So when the parent's troubles overwhelm them to the point, and I'm just using that as a carpet way to say that there's all kinds of different ways that can happen. When those parents' troubles overwhelm them to the point where they split, the kids lose something every time. I can tell you this, kids don't ever divorce their parents. If their parents get divorced, now the kid has to be in this weird position where they know there's a battle going on, and I have to, whose side am I on? And it's very difficult. So at a bare minimum, it's destabilizing. In many cases, it's actually traumatizing, depending on the context of what's going on, how the parents handle it. Do they talk bad about the other parent? Do they undermine the other parent? Is there trauma going on? Who are they bringing into their lives? You know, how are they discussing this with the kids? You know, there's a myriad of ways.
So a divorce would be considered a trauma?
I would say, hands down, yes.
Okay.
Now, sometimes the divorce is a trauma that leads to some healing in extreme cases, right? Where there's real harm going on. But the vast majority of divorces I see, I mean, it's just an ongoing thing for kids where they have to live with this the rest of their life.
And I understand as a counselor, you got to look at the big picture of the situation, and I get all that. But I'm just saying for kids, this notion they'll get over it, they don't.
Well, the solution, Perry, would be for us to handle the circumstances within our own soul instead of blaming our spouse, instead of avoiding responsibility. This is back to what I say all the time with Scripture. We confess our sins to one another so that we might be healed. Healing is the result of confession.
Exactly.
It's not the result of denial.
Yeah.
But denial will lead you inevitably to a split in relational harmony. Now, how that denial manifests itself is different. But if you don't deal with things, and I say this a lot, look, I sin on the daily. Every single day I achieve that goal. And but if my confession is once a quarter, I have a lot of backlog. And this is what I see day in and day out, is people are walking around with all kinds of guilt and shame and hurt and loss and offense that's never dealt with. And how can you expect to have a healthy relationship with anyone with all that in your soul? So then you start to filter things. Two people that are married, they start to filter, I love you, and the other one's like, what do you want? You know, it's like, I said I love you, but what, you know, how? And so that buildup ends up creating a huge divide. And I'll say this, how I deal with difficulty with my spouse is one of the main examples and ways my kids are going to learn to do it. So if I bury it and become resentful, kids don't do what you say, they do what you do. And I wish it wasn't true,
but it is.
But it is. And I look at my kids sometimes, I'm like, oh man, I got to deal with that. They're learning the wrong thing there. And so, and again, it's my belief, and you know, I know that not everybody feels this way, but so a spiritual level humility. So me understanding that my safety is guaranteed by God and His work on the cross on behalf of me gives me the courage to walk into what I see as the buzzsaw of the relational difficulty or the problem. But when we don't have that security, people go into all kinds of denial, rationalizing, minimizing, justifying, spiritualizing, all these things we do to avoid dealing with the issue. And it starts with me. So when I see couples, I often say, one of the questions I ask is, what are you doing? And I want you to ask God to convict you. What are you doing to destroy this relationship? Don't tell me what they're doing. You look at yourself first.
How's that working for you?
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
So my point is that the first point of the coping mechanism, and I'm saying this as a way to try to maybe help prevent some divorce, is that you got to look at yourself in the mirror first and start to deal with you. And if the other person sees that, particularly if you're the husband, if the other person sees that, you will begin to, that's the best kind of spiritual leadership I've seen, is when a man leads with humility and confession. That brings great strength and connectivity to the family. But it's something that we don't really, even in church, do.
All right. The overall topic here is, if you're traumatized as a child, it does show up as an adult.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's some patterns that you see, you have seen through the years. We know this is the case, even though we may deny it. I think everything I read about post-abortion syndrome is very real.
Yes.
Very real.
Yes. And for men as well.
And for men as well.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of guys who lived with tremendous guilt and shame over being the catalyst and the supporter and even the enforcer for a woman to do that. Right. And so it's on both sides of that. And yes, I've seen it 100 times, I've seen it once, is that, and this is another dream of mine. I've talked to so many Christians who have an abortion, I mean, lots of them, that are in church. The reason why they do is because they don't feel safe enough to go tell somebody about what's happening. And it's just tragic to me. We should be the safest place on earth as the church, But if it's one thing I've heard over and over again is that I didn't know where to go, I didn't know who to talk to, I felt trapped. And every time somebody feels trapped, they generally make a bad decision.
Yeah. So what do you?
So I want to go back to something you said off that topic. So one of the ways you can tell that somebody has trauma, the neon sign to me is they are self-destructive. With every trauma, there is a message given by the abuser. Okay, my dad's message was very clearly, you are worthless. You're a piece of junk, you'll never amount to anything, bang, bang, bang. So 9 times out of 10, I would say 100% of the time, but I'm just gonna say 99.9 just because I don't know if 100% is actual. But every time someone's abused, there is a message associated with that abuse that equates their value. And it's given to them in such a profound way and at such a deep level, they believe it is absolutely the truth. And so one of the things that I think is most healing is for people that have trauma, to start to see that those messages aren't true. That what my father did to me was the result of his trauma. Being a veteran of war and having been an alcoholic and yada, yada, yada. My dad never dealt with any of that stuff, so it came on to me, right? So, but as a kid, when I'm a kid, all I believe is there's something wrong with me. The reason why I'm getting a beating is because I did something wrong. Well, that's not true. But when you're 5, how do you, and so that's some of the other thing we talk about in counseling is something called frozen conclusions, And the example I'll use is this, is that when I was a young kid, we lived in California. I was like 2 or under. We just moved from Germany, where I was born. My dad had just gotten out of the military. And remember, all my siblings are 10 years or more older than me. So it was, I don't know, in my 20s, I was talking to my siblings about, hey, remember that house we lived in California had the really steep driveway? And they're all like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the house in California had the really steep driveway. And they're like, we didn't live in any house that had a steep driveway. I'm like, yeah, we did. Was that? They're like, no, man, you were 2. But I would have sworn on a stack of Bibles that was a steep driveway. Well, at 2, it was.
Yeah. Okay,
but that conclusion that was frozen in me wasn't true. It was true for that moment. But a 2-year-old doesn't have a good view of the world. They don't have the intellectual capacity to understand everything. So take that example, and then somebody's abusing you or harming you or intimidating you or whatever. Bullying you. What do you believe? That it's me, I'm the problem. And you get into some more severe abuse, people who are sexually abused. I mean, sexual abusers use threats hugely. And they'll threaten the death of your family, they'll threaten the death, whoever, they'll kill animals. I mean, to make a point, so the person's frozen in fear. Okay, so, and so one of the ways out of the trauma is to tell the truth. Well, you've been trained and told and threatened and abused not to. That's why I believe it's really a spiritual deal for anybody to come to the place where they're ready to confront it. I think it has to be a spiritual level issue. It's not just circumstantial. So the value message of you're worthless, no good for nothing, always leads to someone being self-destructive. So the self-destruction can take on a look that doesn't seem self-destructive, like the guy who's a workaholic, let's say, and he's very wealthy, or he's doing well for himself, and he works really hard and he takes care of his family, but he's connected to no one. That's self-destruction. Because from my view of it, we were made for relationship as humans. That's one of the things, the pinnacle of our existence. So the things that break that down are self-destructive. People who isolate. They may never do a bad thing in their life, but they don't have any connection to anybody. They very clearly pull themselves away, live a quiet life. Then you got people who are outwardly self-destructive. And the best example of that is the addict. The person who's like, you're like, why are they doing that? Don't they know any better? Can't they see? And listen, I don't know where people pick up the message. And usually is never one thing. I've seen kids come from really good homes, end up as addicts. Maybe it was the process of denying the moral structure or the love that they experienced as a kid. Maybe that was the thing. Denying it in their own heart, and they know it, never having dealt with it. Maybe that's the thing that leads them down that path. The kid who, gets bullied at school, who knows? There's 1,000 reasons. But the truth is, every single time there's abuse or trauma, there's a message associated with it. And that's the thing we have to get to. Right. And that's a process, not an event.
All right, we're talking about trauma as a child and how it may impact you as an adult, and maybe you've been struggling with something. I like what you said earlier. Whatever is constantly on your mind now, that is the starting point. I want you to pick up on that. We'll be right back with Patrick Doyle.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at the Dove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on the Dove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back with Patrick Doyle and a big topic today, and that is how a childhood trauma can affect you as an adult. And I think we've all had them. In counseling, you kind of wonder, how far back do you dig? Mm-hmm. I don't know where you think you've reached the point, or do you need to go further? A lot of people sometimes don't want to go there, or they are surprised by themselves when you discover something.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. I could give some people some to-dos, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't really want to do that, because I don't want people without somebody in their life who can help them uncovering this stuff. I don't want you to go do the exercises I would give you without some context of somebody being in your life to help you unravel it.
Okay, is the purpose of unraveling a past issue to get you to deal with it? Or, what's the purpose?
It's to free you of it.
To free you of it.
Yeah, the whole purpose of those things are part of what bind us to the negativity, to the message that we're no good, to the behavior that we're participating that's hurting us. So the whole purpose of this is freedom. It's not a witch hunt. Listen, no one comes to my office who doesn't have something there like, well, yeah, that was kind of hard. All of us, if we just give it 3 minutes, oh yeah, that thing's always kind of bothered me. None of us are without stuff. Last I checked, and hey, a bunch of the stuff in my life I did. It was stuff that I thought up on my own and carried out. So there's all kinds of things. And so here's the deal. Trauma is always the result of injustice. Mm-hmm. Somebody doing you an injustice. Well, what's the antidote to injustice? Justice?
Justice, love, acceptance.
You want justice, right?
Yeah.
If somebody does an injustice to me, I want justice.
Yeah.
Can I get justice for my dad beating me now that he's dead?
No.
Could I have gotten it when he was alive? No, I can't control him.
Yeah.
As much as I wanted to.
Well, the only reason I frowned on that because I knew what you planned to do. That didn't work for you.
Yeah, I would have done something very terrible. But so last I checked, every relationship I am involved in has some level of injustice. All the time. People are not perfect. People are selfish. People, even the best of them, have bad days, do things they wish they hadn't, do things that were unintended or unconscious. So if I have all this injustice in me and then I live every day and there's more injustice, what might happen? I start to get really cynical. Mm-hmm. I start to become very untrusting. I start to lose hope. I start to see the world as a dark place. And if you've had a ton of trauma in the past, it also can lead to having a lot of anxiety about the future. Because, hey, I've experienced some pretty hard stuff, so I know it's possible. So we tend to look at the future through that lens of the negativity of the past, so I can live in a lot of anxiety. Well, and if I've had a lot of stuff in my past, then that can lead to me being depressed because I'm ruminating in it, which it wouldn't have, could have, would have, how come, why not, why not. So you can have a lot of this back and forth between anxiety and depression. Like I've said many times, anxiety is about the future. Right. Depression tends to be about the past. Right. Okay, so anxiety is based on the fear that the outcome will be bad, right? And I have evidence that it's possible. Right? So that's why if I don't deal with this stuff, it just becomes an engine of internal strife.
All right, so you're touching on something that to me is pretty big. And that is, I am surprised of Christians that I run into know that there is just nothing positive about them. Zero.
Right.
I mean, they will see the down, the negative, the problem. They never see anything else but
then I would be highly suspicious that person has some significant trauma.
Okay.
Because that's the kind of intense experience that makes you see the world so negatively. You know, do little kids naturally see the world negatively?
No.
No. It's not natural. It's not how we naturally, like, you see little kids, they're like, you know, just blah. Life has to shape them into negativity. You know, and so those harsh experiences, those difficulties left undealt with. And listen, I'm living proof. You can have a hard time, you can have real difficulty and not live there. And I'm telling you, just people listening, please hear me. It's not because I figured it out and I worked really hard and I just jumped through all the hoops and became great. No, it was God's mercy. I don't know how it happened. He helped me through many people, many circumstances, begin to unload.
And it was a process.
It was a process. Right. And see, this is the other thing. And I don't want to offend anybody. I'm not trying to be offensive, but I really believe this. One of the problems why there's such why the church is so ineffective in this area is that we couch all of this stuff. If you just listen to sermons and different things in our culture, we couch everything in this victorious language. We're going to overcome, and we're going to, you know, yippity yippity skippity doo. It's all going to be great. And I felt bad, but now God came, and everything's wonderful.
Yeah, your day's coming.
Yeah, blah 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 blah. Well, somebody who's been traumatized innately, they're like, that ain't going to work for me. You know, so they might go to the service, and they might, you know, but then they feel doubly bad because they know they're faking it and they know they don't have any peace. And so us being a safe place for somebody to start to unpack that is really going to be powerful for the ongoing life of the church. But like I've said before, the church generally is a very unsafe place emotionally. We can't really unpack what's happening. And so, and now I've said, okay, I guess you might as well just take a bath, right? So, you know, the other thing is that why are we not prepared as a group of people, the church? Why are we not prepared for this stuff? Why are we not dealing with this stuff? Why are we not on the forefront of helping people out of this circumstance? Wouldn't that be gospel-centric?
Well, now you're touching a big nerve.
Well,
I'm about ready to do a series of programs on this issue.
Good. Invite me in.
Well,
I'll lead it.
No, but here's my concern. If you're saying that a good majority of the people sitting in a pew today have been traumatized,
yes,
and they walk in and they walk out unchanged,
yeah,
what did they do for 90 minutes?
Yeah, well, they practiced denial. Now it's spiritual denial, which is the worst kind. Because now I got God saying it's okay that I don't deal with this. And yet not dealing with this is part of what's destroying my relationships with my children. What's destroying the relationship with my spouse? What's destroying my relationship?
So why would you even go to church?
Because it makes you feel better for a minute. You have worship, you know, you talk to some people, you feel a part of something. Yeah. But it's not that peace we're talking about, the transformation. And I'm telling you, the transformation I went through, while there was some of it at church, that wasn't where it happened generally. Where it happened was with other people who took the time to get to know me and guys who mentored me. Steve Hopkins, somebody you know, who took the time. Mike Young, guy that I work for, great guy. These guys gave time to invest in me and and give me a safe place to start to spill some of the story. And you know, without that, I wouldn't be here. You know, one of your board members is really influential in my life, and not because they were telling me what to do, because they were a safe place for me to tell them the reality of what was going on with me. And that kept me from losing my mind.
What would you say, I got to take a break here in just about a minute, what would you say to the adult that's sitting out there knowing they haven't dealt with something?
Yeah.
And I mean, it could be a gazillion reasons why. They don't feel safe, they don't know where to go. God knows that that's good enough.
Yeah, right.
You know, but they're not, they're still packing this load around.
Yeah. Well, the first thing you got to do is find a safe place to go. And you know, to be honest with you, Perry, the radio show, the TV show, has been so beneficial to so many people, because in counseling, it's usually like a cold call. You look in the phone book, you talk to a friend, you go see a counselor. Right. But many people that come to me have seen me for years. Yeah. They sometimes know what I'm going to say before I say it. Yeah. They're like, we know what you're going to say. Mm-hmm. So, and so because they see that, they identify there's something safe there, right, it allows them an opportunity to have the ability to go in, and a lot of times they come and they're ready to work. They just go right there because they've already developed the trust. Okay, and so the trust is key. You have to have somebody you can trust. And you have to have somebody you can trust because they have proven that they are trustworthy, because you take little risks, you don't start with a big one. And this is one of the problems that I see in the church, is that somebody goes to the church, they take a risk, and then they get beat up for it. And now we're like 10 years removed from, you know, it just messes the process up. But I'd rather you say nothing than do that.
Oh, this is loaded with stuff.
Very squirming.
Well, one of the things I have tracked through the years, you know, I better not say it. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with that.
Discretion.
If I said that, I'd be in a world of trouble.
The better part of valor.
I gotta say it.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at the Dove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at the Dove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back. We're talking about a huge subject today with Patrick Doyle. As you can tell, we're not going to get through this. We never do with these topics. But it is a serious one, and that is how a childhood trauma may affect you as an adult. Mm-hmm. And the trauma could be a variety of things. Yes. I mean, the list is unbelievable.
If you believe it's trauma, let's go there.
Let's go there.
Yeah.
So if you are not, let me ask you this before I lose thought of it. Where does low self-esteem play into this? Is low self-esteem
it's the result? It's the result of the trauma.
It is.
It's one of the consequences of the trauma.
Now,
and like I said, because with every trauma, there's a message associated with, and the abuser never takes responsibility.
All right. So if somebody could have low self-esteem, not necessarily as a result of a physical trauma or a divorce or anything like that, but maybe they've just been put down, yes, or not good enough, enough. Yeah. That's a trauma.
Absolutely.
Okay. So they have a low self-esteem. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I'll never be that.
So
know.
I just was talking to somebody over the weekend, and they are involved in a business in Portland, and one of their investors is a really rich guy, has a son. The son is working for my friend as a manager. The son doesn't have any relationships in his life. He's a really good-looking guy, you know, went to an Ivy League school, blah, blah, blah. You know, on the outside you think this guy's got everything, right? He doesn't have a relationship with a woman, hasn't really ever had one, you know, and he's, you know, model, good-looking, got money, right? You think, oh, what's wrong? So they're talking to me about it, and they just started describing this friend of theirs, and I said, well, is his dad hyper-successful? And they looked at me and they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, and is the dad overbearing and the kid never feels like he can measure up to his dad? And they're like, yeah, as a matter of fact, the kid's dad wrote papers for him in college to bail him out. And I was like, oh, so that's a trauma. See, because the kid's never good enough. I guarantee you that wasn't the dad's intention.
Right.
That dad's intention only was for that kid's good.
Right.
Misguided, but intentions are, you don't get any credit for intentions, you get credit for the outcomes.
Because I think, look, trauma, I've dealt with trauma in people's lives.
Yes.
And I'm a lay guy at this. I mean,
Yeah.
I probably added gas to the fire,
Well, I got into my office, so it worked out.
I'll blow them up and send them to you. But I think one of the hardest things to deal with is something I mentioned earlier, and that's the negativity.
Yes.
And the low self-esteem. You're looking for ways to bring encouragement in life and change, and it's I can't. Da, 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 da. It's yeah, but, and you just all of a sudden, I realize, call Patrick. I can't handle it.
Well, and you see, the thing is that somebody who has that going on the inside, they are impervious to the encouragement.
Yeah, and so how do you break through that?
You can't.
So what do you do?
I can't. That's God's business. Now, I will be willing to talk to you about it, and we'll be honest about it, and I'll be confrontational about it and be like, hey, frankly, from my perspective, it looks like you got some stuff that you're not even aware you're dealing with. You've got so much denial, it seems kind of like it's controlling your life. If you're interested in taking a look at it, let's do it. But if they don't want to, God bless you. It's a free country. But you see, this is the other problem that I discovered this when I worked in agencies. People feel like they're responsible for helping everyone who comes to the door. Do you realize that everyone who comes to the door doesn't want help?
Yeah, some are forced to go there.
Some are forced to go there. Some are just going because they're being leveraged by someone, or maybe they have an inkling that they want to do something. But as soon as rubber meets the road, they're out. Okay, if that's the case, I can't fix that. And so, one of the things that I see the church doing is we spend all of our time with people who are declaring behaviorally they don't want the help, instead of being able to help the people who might want it. And so what happens, it's the Pareto rule. We spend 80% of our time on 20% of the problem.
Yeah. And
that's really about us. Instead of us being willing to say, the outcome's not in my court, I'm here to help. What do you want me to do, God? Instead of, it's my agenda. And I'm just going to tell you this, church people, please listen to me. If you make someone your agenda, you are not loving them. That is about you, not about them. And the whole do-gooder concept about, I'm going to go do good. Well, if you're doing good because it makes you feel better, you're not doing good. You're a part of the problem. And I see this all the time. People come to my office and, I talked to so-and-so, and that person just came over the top and tried to control their lives and tell them what to do. And they didn't hear them. They didn't listen to them. They didn't really even care, because what this person wanted was for them to get their act together according to what they thought they should do. And see,
he said that. He said that. I didn't say that. He said that. His phone number.
Send the email
no,
to.
I agree with that. God bless you for saying it.
Yeah.
Because I think we forget one thing that's required when we're dealing with people. The very thing that our culture no longer has.
Yeah.
Patience.
Yes. And that comes from humility.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm a broken soul. For me to think that I have the power to heal someone else is arrogance at a high level. See it all the time. And because we are the church and we have the answers, that whole mindset is killing our brothers and sisters. Because we don't have I don't know. I don't have the power to convict someone. I don't have the power to bring revelation to their memory. That's God's business. And for me to assume it's mine is really arrogant.
I had a discussion, and I want to say this very carefully, how much time I got.
You got enough time to get in trouble. Let's go.
Oh, I know. We can get out next week. No, all right. Look, there's this prosperity message going around, and it's very popular.
Mm-hmm. And dangerous and hurtful.
And there are those who actually handle it biblically, and then there are those who have used it nothing more as a merchandising tool.
Yes.
But I have seen more healing come through contrition than I have come through a message that promises you that God is going to do something for you in 30 days.
Yes. Right. Well, I think
a brokenness, a surrender.
Yes. Well, listen, when you're around somebody who has it all together, do you feel good?
No,
I generally
intimidated.
don't. Yeah, I feel like a piece of, whatever. And so here's my answer to that. Look, here's the God of the universe. in the flesh, Jesus, right? Perfection, right? Who's he hanging out with?
Yeah, everybody that the Sadducees and the Pharisees didn't want him hanging out with.
Listen, and here's the deal. Here's a whore who had 10 demons or 5 demons or whatever it was, is a tax collector, whatever, drunks, whatever your issue, whatever. They're hanging out with Jesus, and not one of them feels judged. So if somebody's hanging out with me and they feel judged, there's a problem, because I am not God incarnate. I've proven that for decades. So listen, that whole judgment and comparison destroy love.
All right, so if we're going to get involved in somebody's life, and we sense through all of the things that has brought us to this relationship that somewhere along the path of life they've been traumatized.
Yeah.
If there's anything I think you hope you get from this, you're about to enter into something that's going to take a long time to deal with.
And we can't get involved because we can't do it because it's going to heal them. We just get involved because that's what God calls us to.
Yeah,
and He's going to be in charge of the outcome. And if this means I walk with them for 5 years and they stumble around, then that's what I do. Right. Okay, but I'm just telling you, if you get in this with a predetermined outcome, you're gonna do more damage than you're gonna do good, because then they're gonna feel like they're failing you.
All right, if you're looking at somebody thinking that they need what you have to give them to help them to get out of their situation, I think that's problematic.
Yes.
But if the person listening today, you realize you've reached an impasse emotionally in your head and your heart and your soul, that you got to deal with something. Now, you've said it a million times, and I've coined the phrase, and I haven't given you credit for it. I took credit for it.
As long as the message is getting out.
And that is, only 2 things cause you to change: inspiration or desperation.
Yeah.
So if somebody's now listening and watching us today, they feel inspired or they're desperate.
Yes.
What do they do, Coach?
They reach out, call my office. We'll figure something out. If you know somebody who's safe, maybe you have somebody in your family, maybe it's somebody in your church, maybe there's somebody you know who you know is safe, reach out. The first step is you got to get outside of the dark. You got to get in the light with somebody who's safe. If you don't have somebody who's safe, call a professional. And just let me say this. Not every professional is safe.
Yeah.
Okay?
We're seeing that at all levels of life.
Yeah, and so listen, I say this to people all the time. If you go to a counselor, if it's me or anybody, if you don't connect with them and feel safe, don't keep going. Go someplace else. Because if you don't feel safe, if you don't actually feel safe and have safety, then you're not going to do any of the work that's necessary.
And I want to say to those who, a friend or a relative has come to you thinking you're that safe person, don't blow it by gabbing.
And
gossiping. I really think one of the great deficits in the church today is our ability to keep our mouths shut. Take things into confidence and put a period at the end of the sentence and shut up about it, If somebody's going to dump on you, then take it. And deal with it. And have God help you.
know. Exactly. But but there's probably, I don't know how much time we get, but there's probably a whole nother show on this. But I would really like to do some training with the church on how to be safe. We're failing radically, in my opinion.
So how did the church create how did the church create an image that this is a safe place for you to come?
Well, you can't create the image, you have to be it.
Okay.
If you are it, people will come in droves, because safety is something everybody's looking for. And when they find it, they latch onto it. And this is one of the reasons why I think most of the growth we see in the church is false growth, because it's not really safe.
Wow. All right. Veritas Counseling, the number is
622-6018, area code 541.
622-6018.
Yeah, or you can go to veritascounseling.com.
A week ago today we had our prayer day.
Sorry I missed that.
We had hundreds of requests.
Yes.
And the depth of the pain and the hurt of people who were sitting in church was another eye-opener for me.
Every time you do that, that happens.
Yeah. All right, 622-6018, or talk to your pastor, find somebody that you're safe with, but hopefully this will be a starting point for you.
Get on the road to healing.
All right.
That's right.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at the Dove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.